Hello! Today I wanted to talk to you about television series. Now what I wanted to do was talk about series that I would recommend for writers, but I found that actually, other than saying that I would recommend a series because it had a really good plot or really strong characters or something, I couldn't really make the two come together, and there aren't enough series that are directly about writing to sort of make that video work, I don't think. But what I thought I would do is talk about my favourite series which have sort of primary characters who are writers. For me anyway, I know that writers displayed in sort of films or books or even, you know, television series are really fascinating, and I think there are some series out there who have really delved into the sort of persona of a writer. I think in the same way that, you know, artists are kind of this dark, hidden underworld, I think writers are kind of treated the same in television series, a lot of the time anyway. So yeah, I just wanted to talk you through some of the series that I have enjoyed that have had writers in leading roles within them. And if you know of any others that you would put on this list, please let me know about them down below. I'm always on the lookout for writerly series. Some of these are on Netflix, I don't have them with me, but I'll start with the two physical copies of series that I've got. And the first one is The L Word. Now I don't know what it is about The L Word, but I adore it. I'd probably say it's my favourite series. I started watching this when I was about 15 and I just absolutely fell in love with it. It is a series which is based around a lesbian community, and it's basically just a soap opera. It's a drama that follows their lives and their relationships and the sort of affairs that take place within this friendship group and the breakups that take place, and there are some fantastic characters. I'd say now it's probably not as sort of cutting edge, but certainly when I was 15 this was pretty out there. You didn't have that much representation for lesbians on screen, and it doesn't just deal with lesbians. There are also transgender people in here, there are transsexual people, there is just a whole host of diversity in this show, and I really enjoy it. It deals with some fantastic issues, and one of the leading characters of this friendship group is a writer called Jenny, and she's a really interesting character. Do not get me wrong, in the last two series of this I could not stomach her, but for the first sort of 2 or 3 series she was my absolute favourite character, because she's a woman who kind of sets off the story in a way, because she moves to a suburb in America with her fiance and she ends up getting sort of drawn into the lesbian underworld, which is, you know, kind of problematic because it is a bit like they poach her. But anyway, and she's a writer, and her parts are really fascinating because she's obviously got a lot of demons, so when she is writing it goes very much into the story that she's telling and sort of flashbacks, and it very much looks at the sort of dark side of the writer life, and how she tries to explore her own past and her own feelings through her writing. I really found her fascinating, and I think a lot of other writers would. As I say, things go pretty downhill pretty fast when she gets published, but then I also think that's kind of quite interesting. As soon as she finds some level of success she starts really playing around with what is probably acceptable, and she writes things about her friends in her stories without asking permission and things like that, which I think is also an interesting aspect to look at as a writer. But yeah, I would recommend. I love that series. Then a more recent release and a more recent discovery, I've got Girls. This is Lena Dunham's quite famous by now sitcom about what it's like to be a woman in her 20s growing up in New York. And I really thoroughly enjoyed this series, but the reason that I'm talking about it here is because Lena Dunham's character Hannah in the show is a writer, and we do get quite a good idea of what it's like to be a writer, especially of her age and her generation, and it is sort of, the series opens with her parents telling her that they're no longer going to support her, because up until then they've been supporting her whilst she does her writing and does her publishing, and it kind of just looks at how she tries to balance her lifestyle with her writing, and how she tries to balance jobs with her writing. There is a brief period within this series where she gets a job which is pretty much the same as the job that I do at home, but she gets a job like that in an office, and it was really interesting for me watching that, and she actually decides that she can't do it because it compromises her own personal writing time. But yeah, it's really interesting. I would say that Hannah's probably less of an interesting writer character for me than Jenny in The L Word, but I would still say she's worth studying if you're interested in that kind of thing. Disclaimer, both of these are probably more for the women, I would say, but anyway, I thought I would shout them out. Then the other series I've got to talk to you about are both on Netflix. Now first we've got Californication. I stumbled across this completely by accident. It just came up, I think, in my recommended, and the first thing I saw was that it was about a writer called Hank Moody, and I didn't know much more than that, but that sold me. Obviously I don't know how old this is because I watched it on Netflix, but I think it's been running for quite a long time. I think there are like 7 series on Netflix, and I believe the last one was in around 2002, so it's quite old now. But I would really recommend watching this. Disclaimer, it is really quite rude. You'll only have to watch the first scene and think, what on earth am I watching? But stick with it. It's less about writing than the other characters that I have spoken about, but Hank Moody is the main character and we follow his life, and he's had this one really successful book, and he's kind of riding on the wave of that book and trying to continue to find his voice and get his next bestseller. Obviously it's a series, it goes into his sort of relationships and his family. As I say, there's not a huge deal to do with his writing, but there are some really interesting little writer insights into this, and I don't know, I really enjoyed it. I found it absolutely hilarious, and I really loved the characters in this show. There is one piece of advice that I always go back to, which came from Hank Moody actually. I believe it's when his daughter is saying that she wants to become a writer or something along those lines, and he says to her, you know, why would you do that? It's like having homework all the time. And it's so true, like that is the feeling of being a writer, that you've always got this homework to do. You know, as much as you love writing, it's probably much more tempting to sit on the sofa and do nothing, but you've always got this pile of homework that never ends. Anyway, I would recommend. I really enjoyed it, and I'm actually thinking about rewatching it. I watched it about 2 years ago, but I liked it that much. I'm willing to rewatch it already. Finally, I've got Jane the Virgin. This is my favourite show at the moment. It's strange, it's very strange, but I adore it. It's just my sense of humour, and Jane, the main character, is a writer. Now, it's not predominantly about her writing. The storyline is about the fact that she gets artificially inseminated accidentally when she goes for her smear test, but she's a virgin, and yeah, all the stuff ensues. But she is a writer, and throughout she sort of writes stories about what she's experiencing, and she's continually trying to get published. She goes to university to study writing and also teaches some writing at university. She does have a book released, where I am at in the series at the moment. She's had a book released and it's not done particularly well, so she's trying to find her way into her next story. She's also doing a bit of ghostwriting. This is interesting because it looks a lot at some writer issues, even though ultimately the series is nothing about that, but it does look at sort of things like writer's block and where you find your inspiration from and things like that, and I just really like it. I would recommend the series whether it had a writer in it or not. But the fact that Jane is a writer and that there are whole episodes dedicated to her writing journey makes it all the better for me. So again, I would highly recommend that. So that's all the series I wanted to talk about today. As I say, let me know down below if you know any other great writer characters that I can get my teeth stuck into, and if you do check any of these out, please let me know what you think, and I hope you enjoy them, and I will see you next time. Bye!